All right, one of the realities that's still kind of hanging in the atmosphere as we look toward the regular season, the question of what happens if someone tests positive for the coronavirus, even if the person is asymptomatic. The belief is they're going to be shut down because they could spread it to other people, close quarters on the field, etc. So you need to be ready. You need to have your roster properly configured. And Bruce Arians, the Buccaneers head coach, was recently on Chris Long's Greenlight podcast, and Long asked him about the possibility of having a quarterback who is quarantined in the event of an outbreak on the team. Here's Bruce Arians discussing that possibility.
That's one of the things I've been pondering in the last 2 or 3 weeks. As we set the protocols, and from what I'm understanding is if you test positive, you're quarantined for 2 weeks. Now, that if you have no symptoms, I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Is it a false one? So there's so much to learn and still explore with this thing. But I've thought about keeping the third quarterback on the roster out of the room.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have 2 guys that have been in our system really sharp. So I might have to quarantine a quarterback just in case of a quarantine.
That's Bruce Arians with Chris Long. And I'll just say this. And this is an example of the crap that I have to deal with on a daily basis because it really is amazing. I've heard people refer to social media as this bastion of left-wing ideals. Trust me, put anything up there that anyone could remotely characterize as left-wing or radical, and you get attacked by the other end of the spectrum relentlessly. And I floated the concept a few weeks ago of keeping a quarterback away from the team in the event that your quarterback room gets infected by the coronavirus and you need somebody who is clean. Keep one guy away from the roster, have him ready to go. People went nuts. Oh, this is extreme. Oh, you're rooting against football. Oh, why do you hate football? It's like, folks, if your quarterbacks on the roster both test positive, you're screwed if you don't have anybody else ready to go. You got to be thinking about things like this. You got to have people stashed somewhere and away from society so you know they're clean in the event your quarterback position gets decimated by this. You can go next man up everywhere else. If you don't have any quarterbacks, you got no chance, Chris.
No chance. I mean, I think it's a very real thought and possibility that Bruce Arians is talking about. I mean, of course, I'm worried about all positions, you know, and again, like we've talked about, I do think this is something that, you know, the NFL has to continue to talk about and figure out, because I think they got to give these teams a little bit more wiggle room with the roster this year. There has to be, you know, a certain set of guidelines for 2020 football and the COVID-19 era where they expand rosters or expand the practice squad, and maybe they can have those guys quarantined off. I don't know how they're going to do it. I will say this. The other thing that just pops into my head, Mike, about like the quarterback situation too. I mean, really weird too. You're going to have a guy, you know, sanctioned off from the rest of the football team at the quarterback position where we know, okay, yeah, he'll probably be able to get in the Zoom meetings and things like that. But man, I mean, what if, okay, 2 of your quarterbacks, they get COVID-19. Now this third guy, he's been at home for 4 weeks, just paying attention to the video meetings and things like that, hasn't, you know, practiced with the team and do all of that. I mean, that's where I just look at it and go, whoa, if we get to that point right there, this season's going to be like, you know, more insanely crazy than I expected it to be.
Still better than having no quarterback at all who's able to play because he's negative for the coronavirus. And that's part of this great disconnect. We talked about this earlier in the week, the idea that extreme measures are being put in place for facilities to keep guys 6 feet apart, to ensure that there is no spread of the coronavirus, no meetings indoors, virtual meetings even during football season wherever they can be done. More than 20, do it outside. All of the things to keep guys from getting each other sick. And then once per week, you get out there in a scrum of 11 on 11 with guys pressed up against each other, sweating and bleeding and spitting in each other's faces. And it's just a strange dichotomy, Chris, of the way the world is going to be. But I think the idea is keep these guys as clean as possible so when you do put them on the field, you have some degree of confidence that they're not carrying the virus. But when you look at the number of players in the league, the number of players on the rosters, I think that may be a little bit optimistic. And again, in saying that,
the whole thing is optimistic.
Why do you not want football season to happen? It's like, I want football season to happen. I just want people who are paid to be thinking through these issues, to be thinking through the issues and have a plan in place so that we do have a season. So that when there's a group of games that is due to be played on a given Sunday, you don't start scratching off 3 of them because one of the teams doesn't have enough healthy guys or enough guys who are negative for the coronavirus. That's what's going to make it even crazier, Chris. Think about how mad guys are going to be. They test positive, and they're perfectly fine, but they can't play.
I know. I mean, I look at this whole situation and think maybe we're being way too optimistic. That's, again, Mike, why I really wish they would take a poll, a secret vote with players, whatever it may be, to get a gauge of hey, if COVID-19 does break out in your locker room, are you comfortable still playing and being around teammates or, playing against another team that has a few players that have it? I think those are real tough conversations that have to start happening. Because, Mike, if we get to week 4 and we're already seeing right now in states and things that, the social distancing has stopped, the numbers are starting to pick up. So here we are in week 4 in the NFL. What are we going to do if we got 8 teams that got half their team is infected with COVID-19? I mean, I don't know how we're going to stop the season for a few weeks again and then start it up and then it's going to happen again and we're going to stop? To me, at some point, there just needs to be the flat line question of, hey, NFL Team A, if you guys get COVID-19, are you guys going to be cool with just, yes, it's in your building and you can go home or maybe you get sanctioned off to some special hotel after the facility or whatever it may be. But I do think they're going to have to start having those conversations to see where players are at, if that scenario does happen. Am I crazy to say that?
Players are. No, you aren't crazy to say that because you're right. Most of these guys are between the ages of 21 and 27. They don't care. Here's the problem, though. The National Football League Players Association, as led by DeMaurice Smith, has already made it clear, at least it was clear in a video conference that was held before the draft, they aren't going to do anything that is going to jeopardize the health and welfare of the community. So you're not going to allow this virus to run rampant in a facility or rampant through the league, kind of do the Sweden approach to the NFL, and then all these guys go home at night. They're out in the community. They have days off. They take it home to their families, and it gets passed around that way. The NFLPA is not going to go for that. Also, there are guys in the NFL, coaches and players who have risk factors that will set them up for a severe outcome. So while most of these guys, and that's kind of like what Mike Gundy, the Oklahoma State coach, first said when this all came up, oh, my guys are young and healthy, they'll be fine. Well, you know what? There are plenty of guys who play in the NFL based upon the body type necessary for their position who are morbidly obese. What happens to them? They say, well, hey, if you have diabetes, you want to stay away from coronavirus. There's a lot of people who don't know they're diabetic. Remember Jay Cutler, the year that he was sick? And he couldn't keep on weight. Nobody knew what was wrong with him. And how long did it take the Broncos doctors to figure out maybe we should give him a blood test and see if he's diabetic? So
Patrick Peterson, same thing.
And plenty of people, they have it and they don't know they have it. That's a hell of a way to find out you have it. And then you got coaches who are older. Bill Belichick's 68. Pete Carroll's pushing 70. You got assistant coaches. You got Tom Moore. So I understand what you're saying, Chris. This is one of those cases where the grown-ups in the room need to be willing to speak the hard truths to the 23-year-old Chris Sims out there who's saying, screw this, I want to play football. Hey, that's a false positive. I'm fine. Test me again. Test me again. Throwing a chair through the window. Test me again. You're going to have to be able to get these guys under control and say this is not the way it's going to be. And that's where the union and the league need to make sure they have clear, understandable rules for everything. And the one thing that concerns me about that, when the NFL issued the memo over the weekend with the initial protocol for facilities and stadiums and Tier 1 access to restricted areas, Tier 2, Tier 3, all of these things, the NFLPA sent out a text message to all the players saying, we didn't agree to any of this. So they got to get on the same page, and there's a lot of crap to work out. And I've been saying this for 3 months, Back when, oh, you don't want a football season to happen. It's fear porn. No. There's a lot of crap to deal with, folks, and I hope to God that if they want to have a football season, they're going to work this stuff out. All of these issues that Chris and I are just kind of haphazardly throwing out there, these are real concerns. Somebody's got to be writing them all down. And I remember having a sense back in late March. The problem is every question you answer spawns 5 more questions that you have to answer, which leads to 5 more questions each, and it mushrooms out of control.
No doubt. I mean, you just sitting here talking about it, I flushed a few things out in my little rant about, you're right. There's just so many contingency plans, whether it's quarterbacks, extra guys on the roster. Hey, this coach got it, but none of the other coaches have it. I mean, that's why, yes, I feel like the NFL and NFLPA are lagging a little bit in their conversations. That's why I bring it up. And I just feel like some things need to get hashed out into a little bit more of a further detail if we're really, truly gonna make this happen here in 2020.
On March 11, Rudy Gobert, NBA player with the Utah Jazz, tests positive, and it shut the NBA down. Positive tests will not shut down the NFL, but I'll tell you this as we go to break. If one person dies in and around the NFL, it's done. It's over until 2021 at the earliest. And look, you don't want anybody dying, but I'm just saying from the standpoint of the NFL, how do you justify proceeding if you've got people who ultimately expire and succumb to the COVID-19 illness?
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.